Dial Models Workshop.
Hi, it's Yeji.
And Clint.
Hey, it's Larry. You are entering Models Workshop After Hours, a modeling podcast where we talk about miniatures, model painting, and we cuss a lot. If you can be offended, we're probably going to offend you. Then you're going to laugh, and you're going to feel bad. And then we'll offend you again, and then you'll laugh again. You see the pattern. So kick out, sit back, grab your brush, grab your paints, and get ready to have some fun. Y'all ready for this? Dun 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 dun. Welcome back to another episode of Models Workshop After Hours. We have Amy, a.k.a. Gildy. We've got Jim, a.k.a. the dude that can paint with, like, literally anything. And then myself, the hostess with not so much the mostess, Larry.
Yo.
Wow.
Yo, dog, what's going on?
Terrain.
All right, so I'll mute my mic and I'll come back in an hour and a half. Talk to you later.
Hour and a half with Jim, or like 3 hours?
Well,
No?
at least that's what Kathy's told me.
Oh, okay. That's actually not bad.
Terrain that's long lasting. Terrain with stamina.
Gildy, from what I've heard, a minute and a half would be good for you.
And now we have all these images of PVA going through my head. Anyway.
PVA or PDA?
Mm-mm.
I just call it scenic water effects.
That's definitely what she said.
Oh, God. So I'm just...
Talk about some white rapids. So, what is everyone else... I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know what it's been, but ever since I broke my leg, I have not wanted to do a fucking thing. So my hobby update is I updated my Commander deck, and me and the boys played some Commander, and we played a lot of Pokemon Go. That's about where I'm sitting on hobby updates.
You pinned your leg.
Yes. I have to compliment my doctor. He did an absolute magnificent job on pinning. I never thought about using titanium before, but it's definitely going to have to be something that I'm going to look into in the future.
Did he use brass rod or just a paper clip?
No, he used titanium.
What size base are you going to be on? Because your pin figures don't you?
How big is a garbage can lid? Because that's about the smallest I'm going to be able to fit on, and I might still tip over.
Oh, no,
Lord
don't.
knows I don't have any coordination anymore.
God,
I thought you wanted to be on a
don't.
plinth.
No, we have learned last thing Larry needs to be on is plinths or any type of rolling
Or
device.
anything in motion, yes. Don't do the garbage can thing. My brother did that one time. And managed to... Yeah, he managed to break his elbow and his wrist.
I'll bring all new meaning to kill a can.
Oh. Okay. Speaking...
All I need to do is paint that fucker red and make it go faster. Ah!
It's like those redneck garbage can races down hills.
Yeah. What was bad was my friend brought me over a wheelchair, and that in and of itself was probably a mistake because, with the entire broken leg, because rollerblading, it should prove that I'm not exactly the most, what's the word I'm looking for, fearful person when it comes to doing shit. And yeah, so here I am. I was like, more wheels. And yeah.
Oh yeah, let's give him more wheels. That's great. You were rollerblading though, not like roller skating. When you broke
I was well, no, I wasn't rollerblading. I was attempting to rollerblade badly.
You were on rollerblades.
I really need to put this dime up or they're going to hear the entire podcast. Clink, 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 clink. So I did do something, and it's going to be the last time I ever go and do this, and it made me sad as shit. I went to Toys R Us, and they had like 5 or 6 items left. I bought a rolling chair because they were selling everything in that place. Yeah. So I bought a rolling chair, and I bought a couple of Skylander minis that they still had sitting on the shelf. And that was about all they had. But that bastard was empty. And I was a Toys R Us kid growing up. So I used to get stuff. Now, Toys R Us had the downside of being expensive as shit, but they had everything. That's something that Walmart doesn't offer. Is you can find stuff here and there in Walmart, but you can't walk in there and find this huge selection. But I'm not going to say that it's any person's fault. It honestly was. It was Toys R Us's fault because they didn't stay modern. They tried to stay in the past and try to hit that nostalgia bone, and it just didn't work. And what happened was they ended up shutting down. But I actually went to Toys R Us. I almost bought a cart. Like, if I'd had a way to get the cart home, I would have probably bought a Toys R Us cart.
And then you would have broken something else racing the cart down the hill.
Well, maybe. Yeah. But that's beside the fact.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't ever big in Toys R Us, so... And then we've had my personal issues, so I'm really not unhappy. But
yeah, you're more the Toys R Us person.
Yeah, that's true. We need more of those stores. They're going out of business too. Everything's online. But that's the thing. You got to stay with like you were saying. You got to stay with the the current times and figure out what's going on.
I should see if one of those other websites will actually sponsor us.
That would be hilarious, actually.
And this episode of Models Workshop is brought to you by evenadam.com.
Or Adult
Nah,
Toys R Us.
I did it on... I did that on purpose. But yeah, it was kind of sad, and I saw some memes floating around yesterday that were freaking heart-wrenching. I was just like, no. Probably use one of those as the thumbnail, but...
Oh, yeah, use that one with Jeffrey in the suitcase leaving the... Yeah, I was laughing my ass off at that one.
You're a mean bitch. I just want to say that.
That's okay.
I'm sharing, like, sad-ass memes. I'm, like, over here, like... and she's over there, like...
Yep. They fucking deserve it. Kiss my...
in a way, I can't disagree with that. Like I said, they really needed to learn from their mistakes and age into the new age, and they didn't. They tried to stay old. But it's funny. I saw a report a couple months ago that with Toys R Us going bankrupt, the people who own KB Toy Store, because even though they're all shut down, someone owns KB Toy Store.
Yeah.
But the people who own KB Toy Store are actually exploring options to bring KB Toys back.
That'll be interesting.
Which I mixed feelings. I loved KB Toys. That was one of the favorite things I would do when I was going to when I go to a mall, and I love going to malls. But the problem is, malls themselves are starting to die. I mean, beforehand, you had Barnes and Nobles in them. You had Walton Books. Yep. You had KB Toys. Yep. You had Aladdin's Castle. You'd have all these different places, and Sears and places like that. And
hell, we lost our Disney store I think 15 years ago now or more. I mean, Macon had a Disney store and all that in the mall. They don't have shit left, and it's all those fly-by-night, 24-hour sale places or clothing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We have a couple really nice malls in Indiana, like Castleton and Fort Wayne Mall, and those are relatively full. But it used to be, Indianapolis used to have, 8 malls, and they're slowly dwindling, and it's going to be a point in time where Indy, a very large city, is probably only going to have 1 or 2, maybe 3 malls. And Anderson, where I used to live, has already announced, their mall is dying. The Muncie Mall, it's nice, but it's kind of on the wayside too. There are a lot of neat little shops in there, but there is no draw like there used to be.
Yeah.
You used to go and you're able to find everything you needed in a single day in a single mall. Now, if you're going for maybe clothes or shoes or maybe a hat, you're good. But everything else, it's kind of like there's nothing there, and then you have to worry about the mall tax. the bonus of having a mall is dying because you cannot find everything you want to do. You used to spend all day. You'd bounce from Sears to JCPenney's. You go get your glasses done at JCPenney or at Sears, and then you go over to JCPenney's and you'd buy some clothes. Then you would bounce over to KB Toys and pick up something, and then maybe Walton Books and pick up a book over there. And then you'd have lunch in the food court. And it used to be an all-day thing. You used to go to the mall.
Yeah, and you go to the movie theater too, in the evening or whatever.
You would start in the morning and you would go all the way into the afternoon, and you would spend your entire day there. Now it's like, okay, I need to go find me a pair of find me a pair of Converse All-Stars. So I'm going to go bounce into Journeys, or I'm going to go bounce into JCPenney's, or maybe a Sears if you're lucky enough to still have one of those places.
Yeah, it's funny, we still have Sears here and some of the bigger stores, but a lot of the other stuff shut down and then moved, and Atlanta's still doing okay, but of course, because, they've got higher population, a lot more, people going in and out and all that, but... Population
density and travel,
yeah, but here, there's just, even with in our area, which is 30 miles south of Macon, it's an Air Force town, and there's just not... I don't know how they're staying in business. I don't know how the mall hasn't shut yet.
And that's really sad, and that's how it's going to be. A mall is going to be a really unique thing where there's only maybe just one or two of them in a large area, in a state, and the smaller malls that used to be attractions for those towns are just going to shut down.
Yeah, it really depends on where you're at. I mean, we went to, of course, this was, I think, maybe 7 years ago now. We went to Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth, and they had a good number of independent little stores in there, some great toy stores, Hobby Town, actual hobby stores in their malls, things like that. Mm-hmm. And you just don't see that in my area. And where I was in LA, there was a lot of malls as well. So I think a lot of it is also, you've got the air conditioning is nice. Some people are just in there for the air conditioning. And now, all I see running around the malls here, if we even bother to go in for, food, is the kids, just who aren't spending money. They're just fooling around or whatever.
Yeah, and that's kind of sad. And it's, I don't know. I love malls, and one of my favorite things used to be to go explore different malls, but nowadays it's the same. Like you said, malls down in Texas, a lot of the, quite a few of them will have unique things inside the mall, and that makes them fun. But a lot of malls nowadays, they're cookie cutters of themselves. They're all the same.
Yeah, and they wonder why they're not doing well.
Yeah, you go into a mall, and the one mall is the same as another mall. There is no unique features of it. Like, I grew up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we used to have Aladdin's Castle down there, and we'd go into Aladdin's Castle, and we'd play, then we'd hit the food court, and then we'd hit, the different things that are there. Maybe some of the little coffee shops that are there. Now, everything is a fucking Starbucks. There's no unique little coffee shops, or everything... And there is no toy stores anymore, so those are pretty much gone the way of the dodo. But
and the hobby stores, the little. Remember, one of the major attractions. I can't remember which mall it was, but ages ago now. One of the major attractions was one of the independent hobby stores where there was the train supplies and the different trains and the trains going around. And there's not a lot of that anymore either. And there's a difference between seeing. I mean, it's great to see stuff and buy stuff on the internet, and if that's all you got, great. But going to seeing the displays and seeing how stuff is done and how the terrain's put together and the different things you can do with stuff, that's a whole different experience. And the kids these days really aren't getting that. So you got to wonder, how do you get your kid into the hobby if you're not, going around showing them stuff?
I remember growing up, and we used to have a train place in town, and they were hobby, and you would go in there, and that's how you learned. There was no internet. There was no, there might have been a BBS somewhere, but the internet was really young, and we didn't have resources like Models Workshop or any of the other big boys out there. And
God, yeah, you didn't just Google whatever you wanted,
Right. It's like, how did we find out? And it's surprising. Late night cable sometimes would even have like some person would come on and rent a half-hour spot at 11:30, and he'd have his little show. I remember this. He had his little show where he talked about how to do stuff with train kits. And I remember watching that, and I learned like how to do some of the washes, how to make some of your homemade stuff, because hell, there's very few quote unquote hobby quality paints out there, and you were using whatever the fuck you could get your hands on. That's why when I tell people, it's like, all right, mix about 2 ounces of water, 1 drop of Dawn, and then mix the water and paint to how thick you want it. And they look at me like I'm dumb. I was like, dude, that's about as good as any wash as you're gonna get, and you can make it yourself. You don't have to go out and buy stuff that's wash. I mean, if you want something a specific color and you like it, sure, but it's easy as shit to make your own.
Yeah, I think a lot
it
more
literally
was
takes a
word of
drop of
mouth.
Dawn. Yeah. And that's how we learned. We'd hit these shops and we'd sit down and we'd talk and everything. And you don't have that shit at places like Hobby Lobby or Michael's.
No, they
You
don't.
walk in, you try to engage someone there, and they look at you like you're Jack the fucking Ripper, and you're like, "Who are you to talk to me?"
Well,
and it's like,
not always, but I mean, on the retro, on the other side of that, I met somebody just a little bit ago. We were talking hobby and stuff, and we got into the 5th edition D&D, and next thing I know, we're talking about Twitch, and she's streaming her games, and and it was like, whoa. And then we ended up talking about Magic, and so that was cool too. But yeah, back in the day, I mean, that's why I was still painting with my freaking, literally my watercolors, the kind I don't know, I was probably like 8 or something. I had this little palette of watercolors and some of the really ancient TSR lead figures, and I painted with the watercolor on there, and that's what I did, because I had no idea.
You mean like what James is probably painting now and painting with right now?
I don't know. Probably not. I'm talking about the kids set, dude,
Don't put it past Jim, okay?
Yeah, that's true. Well, plus that actually was not bad. The only bad thing was I didn't know about top coats.
Oh.
Yeah, so it kind of got ruined after, over years, but
Yeah.
it was either that or enamels.
Right. Otherwise, me and my family actually found a raid group here in my little itty-bitty town, like for Pokemon Go, for people who don't play. I play pretty religiously. We found a raid group, like a pretty hardcore one that we didn't know existed. We ran into them one day, and we actually have like our own little chat and everything else. Okay, for people who live in cities that are larger than 4,000 people, you don't understand. We have like 20-something people who play Pokemon Go in this town, like hardcore enough that at 6 o'clock in the evening we're like, hey, there's a legendary spawning at the fireman statue. Let's run over there and go ahead and capture it. That's... And we do, and we meet up over there and we take down the legendary. Before this, I had one legendary, like, other than the ones that are give-me's. And I had one, Eladius, and that I got in a raid. And since I met up with this group a week ago, I have gained... Oh, shoot. Not even a week. No, it was about a week ago. But I've captured 8 or 9 Regice. So it's like, holy crap, this is amazing. And they're showing me all the stuff they had from previous raids. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of jealous because I never had the opportunity to do this. And it's like, and it's really nice. And it's all about community and building a community and getting it together, which you can do in everything.
Yeah.
We've built a community here in the miniature painting community. We've got people who, that follow Models Workshop. You've got people over at Wargamers Consortium who follows those guys. You've got people that follow Luke. You've got people that follow all those different guys. And it's nice. And it's about connecting people and, hooking up. It's just like I introduced my buddy James, who was a fan of the show, who reached out to me, and we'd been talking for a while. Another James, not a Jim James. And I reached, or no, I think I've got our fans mixed up. Holy shit.
Oh no.
Oh no. But we were able to do some magic with some trades and everything else. And it's just been really, really awesome, and it's been really cool. And a lot of the people in the community, even though I haven't been modeling and hobby crafting, have kept me afloat, and including the Models Workshop people, because as of last podcast, Wifey had come back. As of this podcast, Wifey has left again. So,
Wow, yeah.
I don't know what's going on. She's healthy. She's healthy. From my understanding, she had her ultrasound done. And it turns out the reason her levels were elevated wasn't because she had kidney disease. It's because she has one kidney that's functioning, and it was trying to try to do the work of two. So she still has to follow the diet, though it doesn't have to be quite as hardcore, but she still has to cut out a lot of the stuff that we were already doing. So it's really nice. We found some cool recipes, and everything's cool. Like, we're still friends, but it's painful. Anybody who's gone through this shit, someone that they care about, and it's not like she hates me, which is good, and I don't hate her, but, like, she came over today, and she picked up the kids, and I cooked dinner, and we sat down for a little bit and had dinner, and we talked about what's been going on, and all that stuff, and I don't know, I almost didn't come on the podcast, because, for this reason right here, I am a little blue, and it's but honestly, a lot of you guys have kept me up between the broken leg and checking up on me and seeing how I'm doing, and my buddy Jason, who listens to the show, who's actually local to me, when I was in the hospital recovering from the surgery, him stopping in just blew my fucking mind. It's like, wow, this is cool. I wasn't expecting someone to actually stop in. And he did. He was only able to stay for a little bit, but he visited. He brought me a small gift, and that type of shit really, really helps out a lot. We have an amazing community. I mean, I play Magic pretty hardcore and pretty heavy, and we have our issues, and there are definitely people who are problem-esque in the community. And some people might think I'm one of them because I don't mind pushing buttons and pushing the envelope and calling bullshit out when I see it. But whatever. But we really don't have it as bad as a lot of the other communities. Like, holy shit. Like, the Magic community is fucking crazy. We're calm compared to them. Like, super calm. So we have a damn good community, and we have a lot of good people. And I'm proud to say that I'm part of this community, and hopefully, I'm actually giving back.
Yeah,
all right,
that's the fun part about the game. I mean, people are like, "Oh, it's just games." Yeah, it's not just games. It's one thing I learned way back when I was playing, Ultima Online. Because it is just a game, but the relationships you build with people, those are real.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better than meeting someone who is a fan or someone you've talked to for years online and you haven't met in person. And there is, like, when I met Sinjin, that was fucking awesome. When I was able to hang out with Sinjin and hang out with Lynn and Duck and Nick and all those guys. Yeah. And when I got to meet Jim, that was really cool because Jim is someone that Jim and Kathy both, is someone that I have looked up to in the painting community for 5 or 6 years. They were people that I watched, and I remember the first time I had an actual interaction with Jim, and I was kind of like, wow, because, he's, I don't know if Jim knows this or not, but you're kind of a big deal in the painting community, and a lot of people are like, oh, wow. And I remember the first time I actually had a chance to talk with you, and I was like, wow, this dude is like, this guy isn't even down to earth. He's just like, wow, mellow. This is crazy. Yeah, like, it was nuts. And I was like, all right, cool. And then, it progressed, and, now Jim comes on the podcast and hangs out with us and talks dirty and all that other stuff.
Yeah, we infected him. Sorry, guys.
But it was really cool being able sorry, not sorry. But it was really cool being able to go up to Chicago and hang out with him and Kathy at Adepticon and hanging out with Michelle. And I mean, I could go on all night just naming people that I met that were just truly awesome. And that is, for me, just something in the community that is just spectacular. Just being able to meet people and hang out with them and be just like, hey, what's up, man? And I don't know. Yeah, well, I'm going to stop talking because if I don't, Jim is never going to talk.
That's true. What are you working on, Jim? Or what have you finished already in the 25?
You thought I
PVA
forgot about that. Well, let's see. Right now, I'm actually working on the usual billion things, but it's trying to finish off this Blood Bowl team that has to be on its way to Switzerland by like Tuesday of next week, just
Wow.
to get this thing out the door. And it kind of ties into the hectic thing of trying to learn all these different platforms, Twitch, YouTube Live, kind of all at the same time. And I think was it yesterday, once we finally got our freaking internet to actually work, that I started to do live streams of just me painting stuff like I'm doing right now. No fancy thing where it's all set up in advance, and it's kind of like a programmed lesson.
Hey, other people do that, and it works for them. I mean, they got lots of people watching them.
I saw Mel, the terrain tutor.
Yeah.
The last 2 times I've seen him live, he was filing plastic palm trees for 3 hours. That's what he was doing for the entire time. And just kind of every so often looking over and saying, hey, so-and-so, whatever. That's all he was doing. And I said, well, it does show the less glorious, glamorous side of terrain. Because when you see those videos, you don't see the several hours of him and his wife sculpting 475 sandbags out of DAS modeling clay. All you see is the bags being put on the board.
And the shortcuts, yeah.
And the shortcuts. And what I was able to kind of stress here, I try to talk about it in my blog post and everything else, but there's nothing like them seeing me working on a Blood Bowl team, and all of a sudden I go, you know what? I got this color here, and I grab some other figure that has nothing to do with Blood Bowl and start working on that just because the colors sync up. And then grab another figure that has nothing to do with the other stuff. Because I've got this color going, why not have all of these figures right here, where if I'm doing some skin tones or lots of faces, I'll grab a squad of bolt action guys, do the faces on them too. Why just do it on 1 or 2 and be done when all of these things need to get done anyway?
Yeah. That makes sense. I hate wasting paint too. I mean, I feel like I always put too much on my palette anyway, but I feel like if I've got, my metals out, I'm going to do everything I possibly can with metal, with the metal color that I have planned eventually. So it's one of the reasons I have 3 trays of crap.
The other thing I keep hearing from people all the time, especially lately, I don't know, maybe I'm just noticing it more, but they all say, I haven't painted in X amount of time because I'm just bored.
Yeah.
It's because they're doing one project.
Yeah.
They're halfway, 3/4 through, whatever, and they're bored as hell, which can happen with pretty much every project.
Yep.
And I try and tell them, I say, look, I just needed to look at something different. I don't even care if this color is needed on another thing. My brain, my eyeballs need to be looking at something else besides this crap.
That's exactly why I just picked up, because I've been doing my orcs for so long. I picked up a couple of things, the Knight Armigers from GW, and I did one of those, and then I thought, I need something different than 40k, so AOS 2 is coming out, like, now, technically tomorrow, and so I picked up one of my Storm Fiends, the big Rat Ogre guys, that have all the steampunky stuff on them, and I decided I'm going to do this for a while, because he's been sitting here, primed and whatnot for probably a year or more, and haven't done anything on them for a while, so it's just a nice change of pace.
Because people sometimes they don't understand why, and this is more people that are sending me stuff, and they'll say, well, Jim, why do you want me to send you this stuff if all you're going to do is just assemble it or just prime it over the next few months? And I said, because I just need to see something different. That assembly thing on something that is different than all the other stuff I've had to assemble, that in itself kind of just breaks the monotony of that, and it keeps things fresh, because that's why I started doing these things. And just, there is nothing fancy. I mean, it looks horrible. There's just miniatures all over the place, paint all over the place.
Yep.
It's pure chaos, and I'm trying to tell people this is what it's really like. That this is not, the happy little Bob Ross thing where there's just one painting on the canvas, the rest of the studio is dark and it's quiet and stuff. It's like, no, a real studio has 50 paintings all going on at the same time because there's a show coming up or some kind of thing coming up. There's unfinished stuff here and half-finished stuff there and just stuff laying all over the place. And you got to bounce from one thing to the next. That's more what it's like. That's what reality is.
You see the same thing with people that are painting whole armies can do the same thing. Don't stay on one unit or whatever, I think. This is why I pretty much don't get bored with my works. I convert a lot of them, but after a while, like the boys, I'm sitting here painting the green skin. Okay, I'm like, enough of the green skin. I need something else, so I'll go paint, I don't know, a flyer or something like that. But, or just a different model line.
And they are... I guess now there's a little, because you have so many sculptors between the digital stuff and everything else that sort of Kickstarter facilitates. Now there's way more styles of sculpting than there was, instead of, you can do a Reaper figure that's sculpted by this guy who also sculpted for these 2 or 3 other companies. Now there's just a little more variety just in who the sculptors are too, it looks like.
Well, yeah, not just through Kickstarter, but there's a lot of little guys out there when you go looking for stuff that's amazing. They're still trying to get their stuff out there, and I've seen the Fenris Games stuff is really cool. I love some of his miniatures. You got Heresy miniatures, some other people, and yeah, they do Kickstarters and stuff too. Like Bad Squiddo does, more female figures, and she's got some of her own line, and Oathsworn Minis. Just some really cool sculptors out there, really.
I'm really desperate for a Bad Squiddo all-female Russian army, because they have that. I mean,
yeah. Those look...
You could do an entire Soviet army, because they do all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did one of her last Kickstarters, which was really cool because it's got the My Heroine figure. I can't wait to get that. That's where the I don't know, like, I think she's wearing chainmail, is carrying, like a village type lass or something, through to safety, and it just looked really sweet, and it was different.
They also have the Shield Maidens too. They have that line, so they've got modern stuff, they have steampunk stuff, they have some sci-fi stuff, but they're all female characters. What's the other thing?
Guinea pigs.
Yeah, I've only looked at. When's the last time I looked at? Is there any new stuff, say, in the last 2 months? Because it's been about that long since I last looked on there.
Don't think since the last 2 months. I don't think. Oh, and speaking of terrain, yeah, Fenris just did his. Fenris Games did his Kickstarter for Rebel City. Oh, I'm very excited. For modular terrain pieces that you can either, put together, they're resin, you can put them together and make, ruined buildings, or just leave them as pieces and use those in whatever. I'm probably going to use it in our Frostgrave sets, but those are really cool. I mean, I love, you can make walls pretty easy, but these are really nice, and I can see some real possibilities for making things that would just be really cool looking.
I know the last terrain piece that I made, was a couple weeks ago for the next battle report. It was a really big piece of terrain, and all I had was junk to make it out of, but something in my head said, Jim, don't sculpt the road surface on top of this ridge, because basically the purpose in this game was so that I could use one of my large corner pieces, take these 2 plastic spans, span my river, and then have this long terrain piece that leads, because instead of playing short side to short side, you're going down the whole 6-foot length of the board instead of just the 4 foot. And I needed this really long, kind of winding terrain piece, and I found whatever pieces of scrap I could to make this. And then just before I was going to sculpt the top, I said, wait a minute. If I just left this turf on the top, I could then take my other smaller scattered terrain pieces put those on the ridge line and now have basically a tree-lined ridge. And it actually worked, and it got me thinking, wait a second. Now I have to start thinking of, there's the big kind of, what do you want to call them, the set piece terrain and scattered terrain, but now I have to get those to interact even more. Maybe have like 3 levels. Well, here's the thing too, that I don't know if you see it so much on 40K tables or whatever, but the big thing in Bolt Action, these guys will take a bag of tiny bricks and they will scatter these bricks and like balsa wood boards across every single building on the table. They will cover almost a third of the surface in piles of bricks and boards and scatter stuff. That's actually loose. And it looks more real than real. They'll take snow, sand, flock and that sort of stuff, and they will scatter this around, and it adds this extra realism, because when you set the miniatures down, it actually makes like an impression in the snow.
Oh, wow.
Now, the usual response is, 1/3 of the responses, are you nuts? How long does that take to clean up? The other third is, holy crap, that's spectacular. And then there's another third that are like, I don't know if I want to go to that much trouble. And I wasn't sure if you'd seen stuff like this in, well, Fantasy, Sigmar, 40K, or any of, like, Frostgrave. Do people do that kind of stuff?
I don't think they go quite to that length unless it's for display, because it's, not just the modularity of it and wanting to change it up to different stuff, but also because they're looking at trying to do some fairly quick stuff, I think. And I think, but also the historicals, stuff like Bolt Action and whatnot, just seems to be much more, real about the realism than, say, the fantasy stuff, where you can let a lot of this stuff slide, because let's face it, some of those doors are too small,
Yeah.
or the windows or the whatever, and, you're just kind of, it doesn't really matter because it's whatever. But if you're doing something with a historical set, I bet it would need to be a lot more realistic.
I suppose so. I keep thinking that I don't know what I have here figure-wise that's left that I could... Well, if I had the lizards, they could have gone on this board here, because it's forest, it's not got palm trees on it, but it could be a rainforest. It's close enough to that. There's a river.
Yeah.
Rainforests have rivers, and it would have been really interesting to try and just to see what a fantasy type game might have looked like on this table, because we tried to have the nifty terrain, but inevitably the hills are, somebody took a piece of 2-inch foam and either a saw or a hot wire cutter and made the clips, and painted green on the top, gray on the sides. Maybe they got crazy and they put 2 levels down there. Because, well, with fantasy, you had movement trace. You were limited if you had... Now here, my hills, just by virtue of the Bolt Action figures, they had to be very gentle slopes. So the fantasy ranks and flanks would work on this table. There would be there'd be fewer impediments to the rank and flanks than there was on the fantasy tables I was playing on.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons my first table that I put. One of the reasons. The main reason is my Skaven were from the swamp, kind of thing. So the board I did was a swamp board, but I did the same thing. I did very gentle hills, so that you could put stuff on the inclines. You didn't have to worry about movement trays falling off and whatever. And of course, I know a lot of the with Age of Sigmar being more, well, not more skirmish, but not rank and file like it used to be. There's a lot more openness in the terrain. I haven't seen a lot of hills in use. I've seen a lot of buildings still, and a lot of the new. They have some really cool new features. I don't even. There's like the Sigmarite Shrine, and they've re-released some older stuff that they renamed. Some of my names are completely off now. Things like that are out, and they've got also they just added Eternal Spells, which are cool because the Eternal Spells come with models. Or rather, you get models for them. And these aren't small. These are terrain pieces, and they're not really small. A lot of them are like... One of them, they were showing the one for the Purple Sun, I think it was pretty, like, the size of a cat or something. It was pretty big. And, anyway, those are so people are going to be putting those together and doing that. So I'm hoping we'll see some more terrain stuff coming out for fantasy as well. And we had that great kit from GW for the 40K for the Sector Mechanicus and all that stuff, which had just very, very cool modular stuff you could put together in different ways, and you could have different levels, which kind of fed into the whole Necromunda thing, where the level differences are important in the game, not just 40K. Which I don't know. I hope we'll see more of that in the fantasy too. Because how does Bolt Action deal with, or the historicals deal with the second story, third story, movement up and down the vertical axis?
Basically, if you're going to go into a building, you have to run into the building. That's all you can do. And if you're going to go to the next floor, depending on the type of building it is, if it's just a standard, like a house, you can move to the next floor and you could potentially still shoot because you're inside the building.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a ruin, and I would imagine this could be the same thing with 40K, ruins and intact structures are treated very differently. So a ruin it doesn't offer you the same kind of protection as a building, but it also doesn't make you as much of a target. Because in reality, going into a blown up building is the ideal place to go. Like that's why you see all these towns in Syria that are just destroyed. It's so hard to dig them out of there because now they're like Stalingrad. The whole place is destroyed, and you can fire all the artillery you want at these buildings. All you're going to do is make the bricks fly around. That's it.
Yeah.
When the building is intact, you can collapse it.
Yeah.
And if somebody's on the third floor with a howitzer or a mortar, there's a guy on the fourth floor with a sniper rifle and a guy on the bottom floor with a 10-man infantry squad. Well, you could collapse that whole building and mess up everybody inside. But if it's already a ruin, well, you can't knock down a ruin. It's pretty much knocked down as much as you can do.
Yeah, that's interesting because actually I was just thinking, they don't have a lot. Pretty much everything in fantasy and 40K was ruins from what I looked at. There wasn't a lot of. Well, I don't know how much. I mean, over the years how much it interacts with the models would interact with terrain. It's not like Malifaux maybe where there's some interesting more interest in the vertical axis a little bit in movement shenanigans with terrain and going up ladders and such. Not quite to the level, I guess, of like maybe Necromunda where that seems to be a real thing. But yeah, it's interesting because I'd love to see more varied stuff coming out. It makes a difference in how you probably build your armies too.
Well, the very first, you couldn't really call it a game of 40K, but this is one of those guys that, he would get the codex, he would find it online 2 months early and find all the broken stuff, and he was going to, as I make the invisible air quotes, teach me how to play, and I'll never forget his Defiler climbing to the top of a ruin. And he says, well, I can do this, it's a walker. And I said, yeah, but you need 3 other buildings from other tables to hold your walker on top of this tiny little thing here. So I'm thinking if he can't crawl up there and stay there, then he can't maybe go up there. Or I just walk up there and, flick his foot and he falls off. It's like, oh, I guess he can't stay up there. So
the building
sad.
collapses under his weight.
So that was where, now, what happened in a different game system, it was the Western one that we love so much. It started to get to be very controversial. We have a lot of intact buildings, which most of them were, you could knock them down. And the person I was playing would get really, really upset when I would use my heavier artillery to just take down the building, because all of his stuff was super stealthy in cover in buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, once the building was knocked down, he got even more cover, and it was impossible to kill him. But he was mad that I could just point to a building and knock it down.
It's funny to me that one of the first things one of my sons did when we were playing, and I think we were playing kind of a loose interpretation of fantasy because they didn't know how to play and they were little. But anyway, one of the first things he did was find the highest point he could, climb it, and then snipe the shit out of everybody.
Yeah. That was, and it's still a thing, the last game that we played in Bolt Action, this scenario basically it was your leader, your general, is basically stuck in the center of the board, and you've got to protect him. He can only be captured. You can't just blow him up. Like, if I was to blow him up, I would automatically have no chance to win the game, no matter what happened. So there's no point in trying to blow him up. Well, because of the nature of the board we made, there was this wooden Russian cathedral in the center of the board, literally on this little island. And he put him there because it would have been really hard for anything of mine to get there, so, because of these rivers that surrounded it. And at a certain point, I had to shoot at the church. There was nothing else I could do. Everybody was inside the church, so I knocked it down. It was a wee teensy bit of a war crime, teensy bit, just a teensy bit. And unfortunately, he does the vape thing, so we actually did vape the smoke in there. When the gigantic 88, this is basically a gun that's designed to shoot down aircraft flying at 400 miles an hour, 30,000 feet in the sky. So when it's maybe, 10 yards away from a wooden church, can you imagine what's going to happen to that church?
Oh, good God.
It was splinters with like two Russian guys, like with their hair pointed straight up, like the cartoon explosion, and their faces were all black and their eyes wide open. That was what was left. That was the officer and one of his guys surrounded by smoking splinters. And we basically skedaddled off of what was left of this island. That was the first time we'd ever, I can't remember in the games that I've played, firing at an intact building. They've always kind of been ruins.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't worth it to shoot at the building. And now in Bolt Action, you will see, maybe Mordheim would be like this too, an entire village of intact buildings. Like a dozen buildings or 18 buildings.
Yeah, I keep hoping they'll re-release Mordheim. I mean, I bought an old copy of, I think it's called Cities of Death or something. It's the 40K city fighting.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
With the sewers, you could pop up out of the sewers.
I'm like, because one, I love terrain, but two, I would love to play a scenario where you're actually trying to take over, a city for somebody. Because the fun part about the terrain in 40K and even in fantasy is, you've got such a wide variety of, you can have alien worlds, you can have worlds that do this, you could have so much different dangerous terrain or special rules that it could be a lot of fun.
Because I know when I made all four of my army boards, especially the one I made for the Lizardman army, we used that in 3 battles. It was that big old temple. And I made it so that, and this is the time of movement trays.
Mm-hmm.
I made sure I could fit a couple of 20-man movement trays on this thing, and they would stay there.
Good Lord, yeah.
And we actually, it was part of a campaign, and one of the battles we had at the same time, what do you call them, a Slan Priest with a unit Temple Guard on the top. There were units of Saurus Warriors and my big Skink and Croxy units with units of Chaos Warriors, or Chaos Demons, climbing up the sides. And eventually the big demon prince started crawling up the center. And we still have pictures of this. It's up on the blog. And we had this huge battle, most of which actually took place on the temple, which was supposed to just be a display board. But even
whatever works.
Well, around the temple was this moat. It was basically like blood, whatever. And for every guy that stepped in it, you had to roll, and on a 1, he died. Which was very not fun for me, because when I walked in my own blood moat, it was with a 40-man unit, and I believe 13 of them died.
Oh, man.
40 dice, 13 ones.
Oh, man. I don't know. I always thought things like that could be really fun. But you got to play it thematically. I mean, you can't, go, I'm going to build this super army that's going to win. And then, you get into some terrain or something. Narrative campaigns, though, are just, those are where the high point, I think, of some of the terrain is. We did a thing with our swamp board where I had these little, they were meant to be Skaven holes, in the area. And we made up this table of 1d6 where it could do different things, and either it would be like a little whirlpool in the swamp that would suck you down, or it would just be nothing, or it would be a Skaven hole, and it would give me a chance to move the army, or a unit of the army through the tunnels that were riddled around, and then pop out, or it could do something really cool for my son's army. I think it gave him like some extra power or something, and things like that, or just those can be really fun.
Oh my goodness, that is, what did we call it? We called it the Jungle Hunt. It was the first scenario. It was supposed to be 4 battles in this campaign. The first scenario, we called it the Jungle Hunt, and we divided a 4-foot by 4-foot area into 1-foot squares. And every time you moved the unit into a new square, you rolled on what kind of terrain it was, and then you rolled on what was in there. And it could be a scroll that could help you, like maybe a dispel scroll that you could use in a future battle, or it would be a cursed weapon that unit was now stuck with for the rest of the campaign. Or you could be attacked by swarms, the jungle swarms.
Yeah, basically a random encounter.
Which I was attacked by 13 of those and 2 angry carnosaurs. The demons went through this and they ran into a butterfly.
Oh, jeez.
What the hell is going on? He loved it so much, he said, we should do this for other games. He wanted to even do it for historical games. He wanted to do a Wild West version of that.
Oh, wow.
Where you have no idea. You have, I think, and then this is 7th edition fantasy. We have 1,500 points worth of units, so it's not big armies. But the idea was that each unit had 10 movement. It could move 10 times, and he made it all the way across the board with moves to spare. Me, I barely got halfway across because I was trying to run away from the carnosaurs and the swarms.
Oh gosh!
But that was really interesting. Now, that's something that we could do with Bolt Action, too, I think.
Yeah, you could have random allies pop up or random enemies or something, you could have informers, you could have, people that are, oh, gosh.
The partisans, we can have them
pop
up.
Partisans pop, or supplies. There's all kinds of ideas. That's why I really am glad they're putting the Eternal Spells in, even though it's kind of its own thing in terms of the game mechanics for the new Age of Sigmar. I like the terrain aspect of it, and the narrative aspect of it is really cool.
Now, is this one of those things? What was it? I'm thinking back to 8th edition fantasy when, the terrain could kill you, and it was literally another army in the game. But when it came time to anything beyond just a casual you and me plan, they either wiped that out completely or only used the same hill, the same forest, whatever the magic forest was.
Yeah, kind a little bit. It's not. I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't read the whole FAQ, but if the person who gets to both parties can apparently interact with some of them, and can move them or cause them to be moved. I'm not sure if it's I don't think it's randomized like it was in 8th edition where you roll the scatter dice to see where it moved to and all that, because I remember we had the whirlpool of death or something or whatever it was called at the time that my son cast that never dissipated and just wandered around the board wiping out units for 3 turns or something. But it's a little bit like that, but it adds a little more strategy to it because you can interact with it, and it also means that you don't necessarily want to have that double turn that Age of Sigmar people were used to from the first iteration of the game. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out here, and I'm really hoping it means there'll be more stuff like that and more terrain type things, and maybe a little more back to the 8th edition fantasy stuff, and maybe 7th edition too, where you didn't know what you were wandering into until you wandered into it. I mean, it's nice and all to decide, this is that before you start playing, but I like the element of surprise too. Where you're like, well, I really need to get here, but is that going to be, the deadly swamp, or is it just regular water?
Yeah, that seemed to really cause this is, when was 8th edition? About 4 years ago now, something like that, when it first came out.
Yeah, I think so.
And there was a lot of excitement about it, but then people got angry with it really, really quick because sometimes it would favor some armies more than others. There was something that Chaos Warriors could do that either the terrain wouldn't affect them or something that dwarves could do. I know there was the Wood Elf thing with the forest. And and it was something like they could have their own forest, and then also you would have potentially other magic forests, and you just couldn't go anywhere because you had literally walking forests running around the board killing stuff.
Hungry forest.
Hungry forests.
Yeah, I know my son never liked that part. He always wanted us to decide ahead of time what terrain was what, and I had to agree with him just to get him to play, but I always liked it being open. But then we only played the 2 different armies, so. And they do kind of have more, I mean, they still have the Sylvaneth, whatever, can call those forests, the Wildwoods. And I don't know what they do for them, but I know that they use that old, the tree terrain that GW's had for a long time. They use that now in that actual army. And then the new Deepkin, they have their own stuff too. They've got that that shipwreck thing, which is really cool. And apparently, if you're near it or something, you get special powers or whatever. I'm not sure what it is. I just know that it's a really cool looking piece of terrain.
Yeah, I wonder if people have already taken that and used it, even like for not GW stuff, but for some other game. I think maybe somebody took Privateer Press, some other figure, and they made it like part of a colossal thing. That somebody was carrying that or something. Some big old monster was actually carrying that shipwreck around or something.
Oh, wow, cool. I think I saw it used as a base for something once, too. I mean, it's been out for a while, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a really cool little piece.
I know there's another game, what was it called? We first saw it at Gen Con, I want to say 2 years ago. There's a French company with a game called Joan of Arc. Who would have thought? But it's what's interesting. I didn't realize this, but it can be with basically the same miniatures, the same terrain, the same everything. You can do a historical or just a high fantasy or an in between, where you're doing the battle for Orleans, but now dragons show up or ogres.
Oh wow!
So you can play it one of 3 ways, and the terrain they have like their own 3D terrain that they made, but you're moving on these hexes. But the hexes are divided. They're big. I want to say they're maybe 8 inches across, and you can only sometimes if there's a forest down there, you can only move 2 stands in there because it's too dense of a terrain. If it's wide open, there's only 1 movement that it takes to cross, and you can have any amount of guys in there.
Oh, cool.
If it's a fortress, it's a whole different amount of movement and stuff. But you need these. It combines cards, dice, tokens, miniatures, and even some guys come back. So you literally roll. I guess Mordheim was like that, right? Or even Necromunda is like that.
Yeah.
You roll a guy just maybe injured instead of dead.
Right, yeah.
I think there's a little bit of that.
I like that.
I mean, it all happens in the game. Now you can play. I've seen them play a historical scenario or 2. I've seen them line up 2 big old armies, what look like almost tiny Warhammer armies, because it's 15 millimeter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the detail on these 15 millimeters, and we saw them at Gen Con, the detail on those looks like a lot of companies' 28 millimeter detail.
Wow.
So somehow they've got this super detail, and their big figure is this giant dragon, which is maybe the size of that Reaper Bones 5-headed guy, maybe a little smaller, but over 15 millimeter figures, it really looks big. So
that's cool.
It looks colossal, and this was a unique approach to how stuff moves on terrain. Because at first I was like, oh, hexes. Now all you need to do is like, well, yeah, Jimmy he needs 3 hexes to get to me. That's why I don't like the advanced squad leader versus bolt action, because with squad leader you can literally look. It's like Monopoly or any other game that has spaces, right?
Yeah.
They're 3 spaces away. They can only move 2. How many board games have you played where you're like, all right, I'll just stay 3 spaces away. You can only move 2. But there's no dimensionality to it. This kind of does here because it may be 3 hexes, but it might take you 3 movement points to cross 1 hex. Or if you go into that hex, you
Yeah, 'cause they're all
can't bring all
individual.
your units in there.
Interesting.
So,
I actually like hexes, but yeah, I can see what you mean.
not because I know it seems to be, maybe this is for more D&D or whatever. It seems like some of the companies that make the mats are printing hex patterns on them.
Well, BattleTech still uses it, and I know there, and so does I think oh gosh, CAV, the which is not-
yeah, yep.
yeah.
Well, yeah, because all their bases are still hexes.
Yeah, yeah. I like hexes. I actually like them a little bit better than rounds. And you don't have that. It's interesting. One of the arguments is, oh gosh, what game is that? That you have to worry about the front arcs of the character.
I think War Machine has.
Is it
arcs.
War Machine?
There's a few
it might be
games
War
that
Machine.
Do. I know Mirror.
Yeah,
Their game has what do you call it? Where you're facing.
Oh yeah, the dark lens or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't mind having facings, but it's like if you're gonna get that, well, anal about it, put them on hex bases. Then the front forward facing arc is just that front hex side. You're done, or whatever. And then I don't know. I like that better just because it makes more sense to me, but.
Because I know Memoir 44, it's a board game, and it uses hexes, but all the hexes have different types of terrain. And again, it's kind of like that Joan of Arc thing, where if there's a town in there, it affects every single unit in a totally different way. It was a really ingenious, super simple system that creates a billion different variables. So
It sounds like Settlers of Catan does that too with the hexes. The different resource hexes and all that.
Because here it's the board is divided into, if you're on one side, I'm on the other, there's 3 sections: center, left, and right, and there's 2 red lines. And if your unit is on a hex that's in that red line, you count as being on both sides. And to move a unit or to do anything with a unit, you have to have a card that lets you do it. So you have a card that says you can move 1 unit in the left, 1 unit in the right.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can move 3 in the center, or 2 on the right. So it forces you to kind of construct your hand. You may, if you have nothing but a bunch of right hand cards, well, you start moving your guys over there. Or if you want to do a big tank assault, you kind of purge all the infantry stuff out of your hand to get some kind of tank assault card to make that work better. And that's, at first I didn't think I was gonna like that. I thought, man, I'm just going to have a bunch of cards in my hand, like Magic or whatever.
Yeah.
The first 2 times I tried to play it, I had none of the mana at all, so I died in 2 minutes.
Yep.
And I kept thinking,
Happens.
this will be great. I'm going to have 16 units on the left, none on the right, and draw nothing but right cards. Because you don't get a chance. It's not like you have an army, I have an army, and we deploy and we kill each other. This is, we're going to play this scenario that's already set. The units are where they are. You get to choose nothing except once you start playing. And the interesting,
So it's more strategy with what resources you have then.
It's more strategy, and the fun thing is that you have to flip sides afterwards.
Oh, interesting.
Because one side is always at a massive disadvantage. Because that's how many. If you're going to go attack somebody, you know what, that guy's really tough over there. He might be at least as tough as me. I should go hit him, or look at those 3 idiots over there with no guns. Let's go after them. And that's kind of how it is. But here you have to basically, if you are the side that's disadvantaged, you try and do as well as you can. And now, when the other guy is going to be the disadvantaged side, you know what not to do. You know, okay, we played one of these, I think it was Adepticon, and, well, they found out they were doing the terrain rules a little bit wrong, and well, it looked like it was going to be a complete slaughter of the defense. The defense actually won, because all of these different defensive things worked the way they're supposed to. They were horribly outmanned, outgunned, out everything, but they were in these really entrenched positions. Now,
yeah, which would make sense to be more survivable.
Now, seeing one of the what do you want to call them? How to play games. It was a siege.
Oh, the Let's Play or whatever. Yeah.
The Let's Play was a siege, and I know some friends of mine. They're always gung ho to play those, and other ones never want to play those because they say it's the same thing every time. One side takes casualty until they break through and the game's over. And it's kind of the same thing every time, and they don't want to play those kind of scenarios. I don't know, have you had luck with playing that type of scenario?
I don't know. I think because it depends on what the objective is. Like you do you're waiting for reinforcements. Let's say maybe the other person doesn't even know this, but your objective is to hold out so many turns without losing the bulk of your army or some other your general or whatever until the quote unquote reinforcements arrive, or maybe it's the defenders. Have you have the secret sewer entrance to get in or something, and you have to find it, or I don't know. It could be interesting. I like more of the, not so much miniatures, but the different what do you call those, RTS games where you could do where you do the sieges or you do the either the besieged. I kind of thought those were fun. I think it would be very fun to do something like that. I could see, in a miniature game, I think it would be very fun to do something like that. But I could see how it could get boring fast if you don't have ways of kind of, like I said, mixing it up.
Because I think I think we call it defending the Factorum or something like that. And the defender started out with maybe, I think it was 1 HQ unit and 2 troops in the factory, which was this huge factory. It was right in the dead center of the board. But the defender, like you say, the reinforcements, on turn 2, they could come in basically really far away. But the longer you waited, the closer to the factory your reinforcements could show up.
Oh, yeah.
And there were hidden minefields. I think the defender got 2 anti-personnel minefields and 2 anti-tank or any vehicle minefields, which you marked out before the game. And then they would kind of show up if something triggered them. Then they would be visible, and they were basically, I think, the size of the large blast template.
Yeah.
Whatever that was. And I think that and the attacker, they would basically get points for how many units they had inside the factory. So it was a game of movement. They couldn't just sit there and fire at the factory from a distance.
Yeah, they had to actually go control it or something. That's cool. I like that idea.
It meant absolutely nothing. You could kill most of the other army, but if you weren't inside the factory, you basically got no points for that.
Yeah, that's the only game version of Warhammer. I mean, I don't know. My son likes to play Let's Just Kill Each Other a lot, and I kind of don't. I want to play more narrative. Get this objective, hold this, or it's not just calling it an objective though, but making it actually I don't know, some downed pilot you have to rescue, things like that, and it's other things trigger or other things can happen or weather makes a difference or it's not just night fighting gives you whatever it is plus to cover or whatever the other things are, some of those more narrative aspects to it.
We had a few games with triggers where things would happen, you did something, and it was part of a campaign, I think. And I think we even had a character. Oh, that's right. We had this character he was this crazed psyker, and all he was interested was getting to this warp gate. That's all he wanted. He didn't care. He would join either side. Didn't matter. And I think if he felt like he was under attack, he would just try to kill everything that was around him, friend or foe, didn't matter.
Oh, wow.
But you needed him. You had to have this guy. So it created, you didn't want to get close to him, but you had to have him. And you had to get to the warp gate to win, whichever side you were. And things would be triggered based on what had happened in the previous 3 games.
Yeah, I like doing campaigns like that. Those are fun. Those are a lot of fun. We did one with the Swamp Board where one of the things that would happen was every so often there could be a monster that would would come out, and I think I just borrowed one of my trolls or something from Reaper, and we stuck it on the board and was like, it's going to randomly attack you. So, we'd roll, whoever rolled high got the monster and got to move it, or, so far, and we just came up with stats for it and things like that. Those are some pretty fun things to do, because it's almost like playing D&D with your miniatures.
It really was. I know we wanted to do a thing with the Western game where you were in basically a mine, and there would be layers of essentially 2-inch foam cut with basically mine shafts inside. And as you move from one level to the next, you didn't know what you were going to find in there. It could be some kind of creature. It could just be a bunch of explosives. Who knows? If you used certain weapons, you might collapse it down on top of yourself.
Collapse the mine, yeah.
So that's the other thing, too, that we want. We could actually still do this with bolt action, with especially the Pacific. Because guess what? It was mostly tunnels, right?
Yeah, with all those tunnels yeah.
It was all those tunnels dug in the rock, and you could do the Iwo Jima thing. You have basically an entire battle for Mount Suribachi, and it's 5 levels of foam, and in each one you've got to try and clear out these gun nests or find the secret HQ thing that's in one tunnel.
That brings me, that the multi-levels in terrain is what I'm kind of trying to work on, I think, personally, because I like doing things like that, and I'm building a Forge world out of a lot of the Sector Mechanicus stuff and a bunch of my own bits and pieces and everything, but I'm trying to get it to be probably, 2 or 3 levels high, and troops can move up. There's rules in the book for movement and whatever, but I want to kind of expand on that. I think it could make for a really fun board where you've got catwalks, so you can still see up into them and shoot them if you have maybe line of sight, but not necessarily as good as if you were on the same level directly facing the person, that sort of thing.
Well, now I keep getting sometimes confused. Like, I'll see people working on some GW terrain, and I know they had the factory tiles and stuff, but it seems like they've made some new things like that where it's more of a catwalk, where like a guy could be pushed off of it instead of it just sort of being attached to a building or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's why. A lot of the Sector Mechanica stuff is like that. It's got like a little catwalk, and then there's little towers that you can put together. And they came with, I think, 7th edition actually at the time rules for them. Not sure if they're 8th or not, but they're not. You don't push people off, which would be kind of cool. But Necromunda does, and you can fall when you're jumping down and stuff. You can actually fall and take damage. So I think you have to be over a certain number of inches or something like that. But anyway, that whole Necromunda terrain has a lot of those catwalky type things as well, and little barricades, and they made it very modular so you can obviously work it together. And I'm kind of throwing it together for both 40k and maybe a Necromunda game, so maybe a smaller board for Necromunda and a larger one for 40k, but where you're using some of the similar ideas for more narrative campaigns, like tanks aren't going to climb up these. You're not going to want a tank army or a vehicle army unless you can fly.
Yeah, now what were the orc guys? Because I found, I think this is since the last time we actually did one of these. I found an entire orc 40k army that was prepped and based and all set for painting, and that's when we stopped doing the 40k stuff years ago. I had completely forgotten about this.
Oh my god, you just lost an orc army?
Oh, there was, I think, a half a dozen Death Coptas. I found, what are they, not Ludas, what are the guys with the stolen, they got their the shooty guys. Who are they, not Storm Boys, those are the jump troops.
Yeah, you mean the Ludas?
The Ludas, that's it.
Yeah, the Ludas, those are awesome.
I found a whole bunch of those things, and now I'm just debating, do I really try to rip these things off of the old 25mm round bases and put them on new ones? I guess I will. I think I already ripped them up anyway because I had to reprime those suckers. But I got one sitting here now, and I have not looked at this thing since it was originally put together probably 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
Wow.
Whenever the Def Copters were new, that's when this was put together.
Wow.
That's how long ago it was. So that was like, oh yeah, she's got to hear about the orcs that found all of these orcs there.
That is cool. Well, we're getting our new codex soon, so you could come. It would be a great time to start an orc army. Just saying. Yep.
I'm looking forward to trying painting some of these guys with oils because everybody's like, oh, paint a space marine, paint a space marine. Like, okay, yeah. That would be fun for the 10,000th time, but I've got to paint very few orcs. And especially with all the different skin tones instead of just green. I had the whole story of this army because basically it tied into my Sisters of Battle army. They were running into whatever world this was, had some resource they wanted. And it was what looked like a primitive civilization that looked kind of Celtic, right? And they had plaid and the woad on their faces and everything else. And the orcs went there and they lost. And they couldn't figure out why. And they thought, well, maybe it's something to do with that blue stuff they wear.
Oh, yeah, I remember this story. That's awesome.
And then I was like, the vehicles were going to be blue. And what was it? It's not Bad Suns, or those are the yellow ones, right? Is it Bad Moon. Bad Moon are the blue guys, right?
Bad Moon's the yellow.
Bad Moon's the
who's the blue?
And that's what we couldn't remember last time.
Yeah.
Who the heck the blue guys are, but that's going to be real interesting because they're set now, and I was going to try and paint some of these Ludas up with the oils, and then especially the Def Copters, using all of the historical weathering techniques that I've learned.
Oh yeah, I've weathered the crap out of my stuff.
So now I was doing the weathering stuff before, but it pretty much consisted of orangish brown paint and some chipping. That was it.
Yeah.
Nothing with the dust or the mud spatters or any other kind of textures.
Mm-hmm.
Not really weathered away paint, like actually using the chipping medium to physically chip the paint away. That could be really fun on some orc things.
That is really fun. I've got my Def Copter sitting here, which is not Def Copter, my Def Dread rather, sitting here. It's been sitting here since I got the Start Collecting box because he didn't do real good in my last couple of games, so I wasn't very happy. He's just really slow. But anyway, he is such a cool model, and I have him all rusted, with the very nice Panzer Aces Vallejo different rust colors, and I went over it a lot with different sponges and little brushing here and there so it would look pretty good, because I want to do actual salt chipping with it, where you put the you put the sealer on it, and then you put your just dip it in some water and dip it in some, kind of dribble some salt on it, and then you spray over that with your paint to give it the weathered look, and it looks really very realistic. It's a really cool technique. A lot of people have used it for cars and model cars and stuff like that. And I've never had the opportunity to really do it because you really have to have an airbrush for it.
That's really wild. I've heard people talking about the salt technique, and obviously they're using it on vehicles and stuff. But something like the dread, I think the only dreads we had here was like the old metal ones.
Oh, I have one of him. I've got an ancient one that I got off eBay. He actually was sold to me as a Killacan. And I was like, that's not a Killacan. That's a Def Dread. And one of my friends I asked him, he says, yep, that's a Def Dread. Cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping to get that. I really, really want to get that chipping part of the paint where it looks like the paint is flaking off.
That's the key. That's why I wanted to use that chipping fluid, because when I hear people talk about it, they say, yeah, you can paint that on and it looks the same until you get close and it looks painted on. There's no dimension to it.
Yeah.
And the only way to do it, and I've seen the guys that physically, you are peeling the paint off and it leaves that ever so slight little raised edge.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no way to paint that.
Not easily, anyway. I mean, you'd spend a lot more effort doing it when you could just, chip it.
Yeah, so I think that's. I was glad I ran across these guys. And it's not like they were visible. They were always there. It just something got put on top of them, and then I just completely forgot. Actually, I think it was a box of terrain got set on top of them.
That's funny.
Because terrain can cloud, it can like hide the sun itself, because that's how cool terrain is.
Oh my
Terrain
gosh.
makes entire armies disappear in more ways than one.
Oh gosh. I do find that I do one of three things. Either I play games, I build and paint models, or I make terrain. I can't really do all of it. I end up doing each one in turn. So right now I'm working on miniatures, but I really want to get back into terrain again because I haven't built anything for a while. I mean, I am painting this terrain, but to me it's like painting a miniature. This isn't quite the same as when I'm going to get it out there on my table and go, okay, here's all the parts that I bought from, the Prometheum. I got 2 copies of the Prometheum Refinery and a bunch of the different pipes and some of the other different Sector Mechanicus sets and stuff. And then I have all this, bottles that looked pretty interesting, and little bits and pieces of sprue that are different shapes, and some caps that I've got off of little kids' applesauce containers that are going to be turbines, and, and all this stuff, and a bunch of window screening. I'm going to want to make not gangways, the scaffolding type things, and ladders going up and down, and a lot of pipes and stuff. So this looks like it's a Forge World. Literally, the whole thing is going to be a Forge World, like is described in the 40K books, and that created or makes the different machines and stuff, and has those what are they called? STL, SL, something like that. Standard template. Larry, help! Standard template, whatever. The things where they have the old tech and they build the machines from. They don't really know what they do, but they just, do the incense and the praying to the Omnisci and whatever, and put the right stuff in, and they get out, a Land Raider or whatever.
Oh, it's kind of like the underpants gnomes. You steal underpants, make big profits.
STCs.
Thank you, STCs.
Standard template constructs.
Construct was the word I was looking for. I kept thinking template. I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the plan. So when I get to that point, and I have an idea of where I'm going to put the pre-made terrain, then I'm going to start probably building my own stuff to kind of match it, and hopefully, like I said, getting more than one level, and breaking it down into 1x1 squares so I can try to make it semi-modular at least, so that I can move it around and it's not always the same table or something like that.
Now, I assume in all GW games, pre-measuring is all part of it right now?
For 40K and Age of Sigmar, yeah. I don't think you can pre-measure with Necromunda, though.
Because the thing that I fit with Bolt Action, you cannot pre-measure. So if you have any kind of, and I've seen this happen with when I was watching battle reports, where they're on these 2-foot tiles, right?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, well, I know that can hit that because in relation to where it is on this tile. And movement, because if you guess wrong, you don't get to move or shoot or do whatever, or do your assault, because you cannot pre-measure in advance. So anything that basically puts a grid on the board is not the greatest idea.
Yeah, I'm going to be probably... It's hard to describe this without... There won't actually be a grid per se. I mean, if you're smart, you could still figure it out. If you know the dimensions of, I don't know, one of the buildings or something that GW makes, it's not that hard to figure out. But because I do want to, like I said, I do want to use it for Necromunda. But, yeah, I could see that would be a definite something you got to watch out for with Bolt Action. And I think some of the other historicals are like that as well. Because
I think, oh my god, actually when you just said that, it reminded me of something I would hear people would do at tournaments. They would actually try and pre-measure some of the terrain before the game started.
Oh my god.
so that they would know how much they could move through it or how far apart the buildings were in advance.
Interesting.
Yeah, nothing surprises me in tournaments. Even the bolt action tournament that I did, if it wasn't for me knowing the game so well, and it being historical, where you can't convince me that thing, destroys everything out of one or better. You can't, because I know it doesn't. It wasn't that powerful, and it's just a gun. But he was sitting there. We could have finished the game, but instead he must have spent at least a half an hour walking around with a rule book or my list in his hand.
Oh God!
And basically, everybody that was around kept saying, "Go sit down. What are you talking about? You can't do that. There's no way you can try and interpret how his." And it's a printed out official list. It's not like I wrote it by hand. So it's, oh my goodness, yes, I can only imagine what it's like with now a whole new rule system out, although I guess they sort of update things faster now with FAQs and stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like GW does, that's for sure. They're doing a lot better with customer feedback, I guess you'd say. I know there was a lot of differences of opinions, although the rollout for Age of Sigmar so far has been a lot better than the original. I don't want to go into that again, but I think they really kind of learned from their mistakes, which is nice to see for once. And I don't know enough about the new system to really be able to say what changed or what's changing.
I mean, how does it even... I haven't seen anything of Age of Sigmar as far as gameplay or anything like that. Is it more... you played Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Not very much.
Does it almost work more like that now?
So how are your Age of Sigmar armies going, Amy?
Well, I actually am waiting for the second edition to finish rolling out so I can get a hold of the book and everything, because I have no money right now.
So second edition of Disappointment is what you're saying.
Well, I'm going to bring out my Skaven again and probably learn the rules that way, because they're still fairly familiar, even though they've changed a lot. At least I know what the models are, and go from there. And then I'm probably going to build something like a Deepkin army, because I really like those models. That's the one thing. The new models, the Nighthaunts, the Deepkin, all that stuff that's coming out, and I'm sure they have a bunch more stuff planned. They are just absolutely gorgeous. They're just beautiful models, and they're not that bad to put together from what people have been saying, so that's really nice. New models are always awesome, but the Deepkin are really beautiful. Those are the CL type things coming out, and the Nighthaunts are obviously like a, not vampire counts, Death Army.
So those are all the floaty things that I've been seeing now all over Facebook.
Which one's like, the night? That looks like the ghostly spirits and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, because it seems like that's the new trend of theirs. Because I put together the new witch elf figures or whatever for the dark elves, and just their tail, their skinny little tails, all that's holding the miniature up, and they bounce. It's
oh my god.
Oh yeah, just spraying them with the airbrush. The things were waving around like they were like a balloon on a string or something.
They do seem to have an interesting style coming, kind of like that, because the Nighthaunts kind of strike me that way as well. They're being held up by their little robes, kind of, like they're floating. I mean, it looks cool. That is one thing though that I'm a little concerned about, is because how well they'll how well they'll get to and from games and stuff like that.
Well, I can say the dark elves they're on their tails. It is. I'm trying to think about how you can describe. Imagine it's not even the. I'm trying to describe the thickness of this thing. It's barely like the thickness of pencil lead, only it's soft plastic, and that's what's holding up the entire figure. which has
Interesting.
pointy wings and everything else. And I'm seeing all these floaty death guys, and I'm seeing with the sea guys, the schlong riders and stuff that are just kind of balanced on the long serpents there.
Oh yeah, the tail.
It's more dramatic. It's obviously what they're going for is really super dramatic figures, which look really cool. It's just I remember how people would break like some Imperial Guardsmen, pulling those out of their foam case, and half their figures would be in pieces. And and assembling these, at least all of those Witcho figures were more like assembling a 1/48 scale model kit, where the head was in 5 pieces. One piece is part of the torso, part of the face, part of the leg, and you would glue other parts of the leg to that leg instead of torso, head, arms, that sort of thing. And that's kind of the new thing. What you have to do to make those kind of dramatic poses, you can't do torso, head, arms anymore.
Well, they did do. I think the ones in the Start Collecting box. Because I was asking somebody about this, who's actually seen them. Some of them are push fit now, though. They're like the easy fit, and they fit together really nicely. So they're that kind of weird thing. It doesn't look like anything until you get the other half of the model that it goes to, and it goes together. But when I put the custodes together, those are just, they've gotten much better at figuring out where to put the joins, I think, and making it look and still making it look dynamic. And it's still, yeah, it might be, there might be some thin plastic down there, especially on those Deepkin and the Nighthaunts and whatnot, but they still look, like you could probably support them okay. But I do worry about putting them in storage and things like that. I don't know if you probably want to magnetize those, I should think.
Are the Nighthaunts more than one box, or is it, that's the other thing it seems to be too, is one box can build 2 different types of units?
Oh, well, I only know the Nighthaunts from what I've seen in the Start Collecting. They're just the new, new army of death, and they're their own little faction, I guess you'd say. Kind of like the Deepkin are. So I expect you're going to have more Nighthaunt stuff coming out, too, or more interactions with it. I'm hoping that since we're getting these, and we're getting, we've got the new Sea Elf model type things, that maybe we'll get some other new Skaven-y type stuff, too, maybe some new orcs. They're actually doing, right now, a 24-hour live stream on Warhammer TV, which you can watch even if you're not a subscriber. And it's going from, let's see, it started my time in Eastern Standard about 7, so it'll be going until, 7 p.m. tomorrow. So they're 12 a.m. to 12 a.m., 24-hour stream. And they got a bunch of games. They're doing, going to be talking more about the Nighthaunts and the new army and the Start Collecting stuff. Not the Start Collecting, the new beginner box. It's got the Stormcast half and the Nighthaunt half and the rules and all that for AOS 2.
Now, maybe I heard this somewhere that because maybe now they're doing this more the undead or the death army, that maybe some kind of new Tomb King thing leaks back in, or is that just some kind of dream that somebody decided to kind of mess around with me with on Facebook?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard anything officially, but I have heard people asking. So, who knows? Maybe we'll get something. It's possible. I'm actually kind of hoping for Empire Bretonnians.
Yeah, so what do people... I was just thinking this because they ask again, Jim, why don't you play? I said, well, all the people I know, even now, most of their armies still don't exist. There is no Empire army right now, right? Because there's no Bretonnians either.
Not really. There's some leftover stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, in a way, I think the Stormcasts have kind of taken over that. I mean, they haven't, obviously, they're not really related, but they've got the whole kind of night thing going, in a sense.
Because I had no idea what their plan was once once all of my armies were wiped out, then that just kind of ended it right there. That was the end of that. And I kind of not paid attention. Same thing, just kind of looked at other stuff. It's not like it wasn't just like I'm going to go away from you and do nothing. It was, well, okay, there's all these other things that I never heard of before. Like even this Joan of Arc thing, which I was like, oh, okay, it's another game. And then when I saw the how to play things, this is kind of different. It's really kind of a different way to approach things. And if you want to do a historical, you can. If you never want to do historical at all, and you just want to do fantasy, there are all kinds of ogres, trolls, dragons, flying things, all kinds of stuff that's in there.
Yeah. Well, they kind of made me go into 40K when they did the thing with fantasy. So I was just too disgusted to deal with my board gaming.
But at least you've been able to do some fun stuff with those orcs.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was the thing, is I really got drawn into the whole conversion thing, and I'm really, really hoping that when the codex comes out, we'll have rules or strategies, or stratagems rather, that'll be interesting for, looted wagons and stuff like that, and just make it very orc feeling in the army, and give us, new models, because some of them are really, really old, and some of them just need to be updated, or they're the wrong size. Some of them don't exist. I know Larry can talk about that one. Your poor Eldar.
Oh, yeah, I guess I'm kind of glad that I never painted those orcs, because I don't think I really could have done them the sort of, just like what you're talking about with all the chipping stuff. I didn't know nothing about that back in the day, so I was kind of glad I never painted them then.
Oh yeah, I can see that. That's the weird thing with me painting some of my Luna Wolf for 30K, is they're not even remotely as weathered. They're a lot more pristine, although I am eventually going to probably do a little bit of weathering here and there. I'm just trying to keep it very, because they keep up their armor, they actually care about it. Orcs, not so much.
Yeah. I guess it would be fun to do. I know Larry was trying to do, he was painting some of his Eldar vehicles with his color shifting type paints that he had found.
Mm-hmm.
And we would oftentimes be doing one of these podcasts, and you'd be hearing an airbrush compressor going in the background, because that's what he was doing. Yeah, I remember he was doing at least 2 podcasts. He was messing around with his color shift paints.
Yeah, and that came out beautiful. At least the last one I saw you do.
Yeah, I really need to get actually back into the entire thing known as painting. I need to, I don't know. The one added bonus to owning a house all to yourself is that you can move your painting studio anywhere, so I don't have to put it in the flooding basement anymore. I'm about to lose my living room and gain the largest painting studio you have ever seen.
Yep.
Well,
I'm kind of waiting for my kids to move out of the house so I can convert some of this stuff to a bigger area to work with.
Well, I mean, there's those things called like sleeping bags, and just get in one of those UN refugee tents or something like that and set them up on the front yard.
Oh, God, out here the humidity would kill you. I also put my kids in the same, because we have a 3-bedroom mobile home, and, I'm like, I put my kids in for when they were older, they just shared a single room, just their beds, and then we have all the desks and work stuff and computers in a different room with my painting stuff. And it's like, I thought, oh, this is great, because they're gonna want to get away from each other, right? So they're gonna want to move out faster. Hasn't worked yet.
They haven't taken like tape or whatever and drawn a line in the center of the room, and this part's mine, this part that's what my brothers did at one point.
Oh, God. I think we did that one time, too, when I was a kid. No, they haven't. Because there's 3 of them. There's not 2, so it's, makes a difference, I think.
Yeah, 3-way Civil War. Like, the house is still there.
Well, luckily, they like different activities, and my youngest has really gotten into actually painting. Not painting so much, but art in general, and I've been trying to get him to do like some physical paint, some physical things, and he likes the digital though.
Well, I've seen, oh my god, and it's been for a while. It seems like a lot of the illustrations that, well, they look like paintings, but they are really done digitally. I've seen people doing what it looks like they're just using oil paint, but they're using like one of those tablet things. Oh, what are those things called? Not a Wacom tablet. It's and I always forget the name of the darn thing. But it's these really super cool tablets, and some of them are big.
Yeah, we were looking at those because that's what, that's kind of what he wanted. And I'm like going, yeah, that's not happening. So
we saw the same thing and went, wow. Well, it makes sense because it is a very powerful tool.
Yeah. And if you're professional, that's your profession and all. Eventually, sure, great, But meanwhile, while you're learning or while you're, you don't have a job and you're 17, maybe you can just, play with this.
Yeah. Well, it's when I see some of these things, it's even just taking the texture filter. Now, I guess you can do it even in Photoshop. You could make the picture of one of your miniatures look like it's painted on canvas or on watercolor paper because you just throw the filter on it.
Yeah, they got those on those apps and on the phones. That was going around for a long time on Instagram where they would do like the kaleidoscope effect or something. It looked like a church window kind of thing.
I just want to point out how seriously old the two of you sound right now.
I knew you were going to say that.
They have these fancy apps nowadays that you can make your miniatures look like, and it's they call them filters and. Man, those fangled kids used to do that silly stuff, and I just don't know.
Back in my day, we had to make our crayons. No, I do think there's something to be learned from doing it physically, though, too. From doing physical art, using the different mediums and getting an idea of not just what they look like, but what they feel like.
Because I know I had to do both. I was doing computer graphics when the only way to do computer graphics was to draw a green line across the screen from one X coordinate to another. That was computer graphics in 1982 and 83.
Oh, kids have no idea how good they have it today, Larry.
And I remember in 1984 when you were super excited to have 16 colors to choose from.
Oh, God. We used to have computer programs printed on the back of our cereal box and we go type it into our Commodore 64.
Hey, I remember Turtle, damn it. Don't sit there and try to shame me because I don't happen to be quite as ancient as you.
Yeah, we remember before all that stuff.
I was alive in 86 and I was playing on computers in 86. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I did it before that. Anyway, yes. It's cool.
Okay, just because I don't remember the days of punch cards doesn't mean nothing.
We had some of those in the house because my sister was working on computers that used punch cards.
Oh, I had to read off my brother's... I don't know, he paid me like a penny or something, a card or something, and I helped him type them in. It was hilarious.
Yeah, those good old days of super ancient stuff, and yeah, baby. Now it's just time for adult diapers and Metamucil shakes.
As long as I get my beer, I'm fine.
We don't need to know about your fetishes, Jim.
Yeah, the fiber in my diet has increased so much over the last 48 hours. That dog is barking. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
God. Oh, boy.
I don't know. I'm at the point now where if I get this stupid airbrush out again and it doesn't do anything, I'm just going to ship the sucker to you, Larry. Go, please.
I'm waiting. There's like 3 people so far that have said they're going to send me their airbrushes to fix. I'm off work. Now would be the perfect time to do it. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
I may actually have to. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I haven't gotten it out again recently. I had to put it up for a while because, reasons.
So what happened to it?
I have no idea. It just won't. It just won't blow.
It won't squirt?
It won't squirt.
It has a squirt problem?
But the air is going through it fine, so, which is weird. So I put paint in it, but nothing happens.
Actually, well...
And I've cleaned it a couple of different times, and I've checked the needle, so I don't know. It may just be beyond my expertise at this point. And they're both doing it, which is what's killing me, so I don't know.
Will you run it just regular paint through or just primer?
Let's see. The last thing I ran through it was primer. And then before that was, thinned, gloss varnish. And had to clean it really well while I was using that. And then I switched to start primering stuff, and that's when it started clogging. So, I don't know. Well, really need it, though, because we're in summer. We've got this humidity that's like 79% with no rain. Or worse. 90 to 100 degree temperatures. Yeah, there's no rattle can priming when it's like that. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I think it was 96 today. It's supposed to be 98 tomorrow, and the humidity is pretty much about as high as it can get. Basically, rainforest-style humidity. I think we've come 1 degree from records yesterday, and, supposed to be 1 degree short of the record tomorrow.
Wow.
That's why I was so glad that, we started priming stuff years ago. We would just take, primer that people would use through an airbrush, like the Vallejo primers and stuff. You just brush those on.
Mm-hmm.
It took longer, but then we just remembered how many times with those stupid spray cans, we'd be outside, you'd spray it from the top, then you knock them all down, spray it again, knock them down on the other side, spray it again. You've sprayed them 5 times, and you go, oh, look, I'm going to have to spend half an hour with each one of these, painting in places where the primer didn't get. And we said, screw it, why don't we just brush it on from the start and save ourselves the problem?
Yeah, I get, I think it's the humidity here. I get, and it's not just from over-priming, because I have tried both, to really carefully not over-prime it. But you get almost like hairs. And
same thing happened to us.
Yeah, a texture that builds up. It just doesn't adhere quite properly when it hits it, I guess. But it's not worth it. I got the Vallejo surface primer that I brush on, but I've got a lot of stuff built. I've got a whole Forge Bane box I'm working on. I got a bunch of Drukhari stuff for my son. I got a bunch of Guild for Malifaux. I've got my Terminators for my 40K, or 30K rather. Got Necromunda guys, and my new Orky battle wagon created out of the Bane blade that Larry got me. This sucker is huge. He is huge. I'm calling him Da Beast.
That was my next question, is what's his name?
That's what she said, and you should call it Thumper. The Thumpmobile.
That might be the gun. I might name the gun Thumper. The gun's big enough; it can be called Thumper.
We can shoot. We need to shoot the Thumper. Kill the humans.
Yeah, I took one of the turrets off of one of the sides and moved it put it on top. Put the battle wagon, the top part of the battle wagon, kind of put it onto the turret instead. Built that up. Put the gun in it. Put a orc mech gun in place of the smaller turret, and I put one of the galvanic servo haulers from one of the kits that GW makes. It's a little grabby arm thing, and I stuck one of the barrels, one of the GW barrels in it, and it's adding fuel to him, and yeah, it's cool. It looks pretty cool. It's come out really nice. I just need to prime the sucker though, and I definitely need to airbrush this because there's just so many little areas where you're not going to get to it with a rattle can, even if I wanted to. And my God, brush priming this thing would take me. No, that's not happening.
Yeah, I was kind of a little bit suspect at first. And is really using an airbrush to prime all that much different than a can? Outside the fact you can sort of do it indoors, but you can get to spots with that airbrush that you just can't get with the cans.
I think you use a lot less primer too, even with the rattle cans, because I got the, how do you say those, Larry? The
Stynores?
Yeah, that stuff. I got those on Larry's suggestion. They're really, really good. I really like it. Didn't have to thin it. Barely used any, and I have primed a shitload of stuff. Except for the airbrush not priming anymore, but, you know. Other than that, it works awesome.
Now, do you have, was that the Badger 105 or something like that?
No, I've got a Talon, and I've got, actually I've got two Iwata Neos. The only difference being one has the little bottle on the bottom and one has the cup on the top. And, yeah, they just, I don't know, they're just not functioning properly right now.
Those darn things can be super temperamental. I've seen them where it takes next to nothing to clog those things, and then I've seen them where I've practically put glue through it, and it's fine, and nothing happens. What is the difference here? Why now is this thing kind of just being a pain in the ass? And I know now I've taken to just using a lot more rubbing alcohol to shoot through it.
Yeah, I've been cleaning a lot more with, like, isopropyl, like, Yoji was telling me. I'm like, yeah, it works a lot better. It cleans a lot better, a lot faster. I still do need to get one of those ultrasonic cleaners, though.
I saw some picture on Facebook. Now, I've never seen an ultrasonic cleaner, but someone claims that, and it was an Iwata brush, they said that it fell apart in their sonic cleaner. What does that do that made the thing fall apart? Like the cup fell off.
How did they put it? What?
The only thing I can think of is, did they put it metal on metal? I mean, you're not supposed to put... Okay, so what an ultrasonic cleaner does is it basically shoots sound waves at a super high pitch through the liquid that you have in it. And it basically... They use them... If you've ever went to, like, K Jewelers or something in the mall, and you've had your rings cleaned, and you hear that... Like that zzz sound, that's an ultrasonic cleaner. And it just basically vibrates the dirt off of it, but you're never supposed to put it metal on metal because it can cause some serious damage because it vibrates and it's at a super high frequency. And I've run my Infinities through my ultrasonic on multiple occasions, and if his Iwata fell apart first off, probably a Neo. That's my guess, which...
Yeah.
It says Iwata, but it's not an Iwata. So translation, it was probably their cheap knockoff brush, or it had some serious defects, or they just did something to really fuck the airbrush up. There is no.
Are they putting the whole? I mean, are you putting? You don't put the whole thing in there, right? I assumed you take it apart and put the bits you needed cleaned in it.
It depends. Like I'll stick it where the nozzle and the cup is inside the cleaning bay, and then I'll turn it on. But there's a little plastic basket in there where it sits in.
Yeah.
And I have a little eyeglass version that I have sitting on my desk, which I need to go buy a new one of because I had a very heavy object fall from the top of my shelf and land on my ultrasonic. It still works, but it's definitely really kind of sketchy right now. So I definitely need to look into upgrading it a little bit. Well, no, actually, I don't need to upgrade it. If I do buy another one, I'm buying this exact same model again. I've really loved it. It's really cracked right now. It works, and what was it that fell? It was something pretty effing heavy, and it was from the top of my shelving units, and it landed right on it, and it busted the shit out of it. But
I've lost models to something similar to that, to where the point where I cleared the stuff out of the immediate area where I'm working, so it doesn't land on my models that I'm working on.
It didn't Justin? He made that one ship. It was for a painting contest a while back, and he had all it was from Fifth Element or something like that. It was like the floating
with the little
restaurant.
sushi the little floating sushi restaurant.
Yeah, with all of the little garbage bags and stuff filled with the empty things.
Oh wow, cool!
And he had it up on a shelving unit, and he put one thing on the shelving unit. He came back in the next day, and all the stuff on the shelving unit, including his finished piece, was now laying in pieces on the table.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
If you really want to rile Justin up, send him a picture of a wall-mounted shelf with anything on it. It's.
Oh. Well, that's good to know, because I was just about to, not that it can rile him up that way, but speaking of wall-mounted shelves, I was just about to add some more shelves on here, and I think I'm definitely going to secure them to the studs because, reasons.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Take appropriate precautions. Add a couple extra L brackets if you're feeling a little antsy about it, and make sure that you're in a stud.
Well,
and use longer screws. Worst case scenario, if you're mounting shelves to a wall and you know you're going to have some high value items on there, especially if you didn't build the house, you don't know if there was a double sheet of sheetrock put down or what's going on in everything. Take it and look at the size screw that you have. It's probably a standard screw. Go to the hardware store. They probably included like a little 1-inch screws. Yeah. Fuck that noise. Yeah. Run to the hardware store and go, hey, I need a screw this big, but I need it like 2 to 3 inches long. And then all you do there to do it successfully is you take a drill bit that's smaller than that particular size screw,
your pilot hole,
which you can probably pick up at the same hardware store. Even if it's Home Depot, they'll help you out and be like, hey, this is the screw I need. I need to drill a pilot hole, just like Gildy said. Drill a pilot hole where you're at. One, you can make sure that you're in wood, because when you pull the drill out, you should see wood at the very tip of it. And then you screw that in really nice and hard. It's going to secure it so much better. And you don't have to worry. Okay, yes, you still have to worry about the fucker falling. But at the same token, you have a little bit more security. Especially if you go out and you add a couple extra L brackets. You can get like little 1-inch L brackets, hide it on the top of the shelf, because a lot of times what happens when these shelves fail, it's because they're mounted on L brackets. And what you're doing is you're putting everything on top, which is above the top screw. And especially if you're not in a stud, or if you're barely in a stud, what'll happen is basically you're applying, you put a 1 pound weight on that shelf. Well, the torque that's being applied to those screws is a lot more, and especially if you have it towards the front of the shelf. So by adding a little 1-inch by 1-inch L bracket at the very top, where you're not really going to be able to see it, even if it's just a single one, it's going to hold the top of that shelf against the wall flush, and it's going to reduce the amount of torque on those L brackets that's holding the shelf up.
Yep, also good if you have cats.
Amazing if you have cats. Or you could just honestly get track shelving, where you go and you buy the tracks. You can add your own little L brackets into the tracks, and you add the shelves on those.
I haven't had great luck with those, just because, well, add your own shelves, you'd be much better off, because the shelves that some of those come with are particle board, and they're really too heavy for what you want. No,
you don't buy the pre-built kits. You go to Home Depot, where they sell all the different parts individually, so you can be like, hey, look, here's I'm going to need 5 4-foot sections of tracking, because I want my shelves to be along like a 10-foot wall. And the cool thing about those is, because the shelves float on top of the L brackets, they're not actually attached. You can attach them, but they don't have to be. So the cool thing about that is, if you know that you're going to have some heavy weight, instead of 4, you can put 6, or you can put it on every single stud that's along that wall, and you have an L bracket for that shelf. And you can customize it yourself. Is it a little more expensive than those fly-by-night shelving things you can get at Walmart? Yeah, it is. But you also have the security of knowing that your shelf isn't, barring the wall falling the fuck down. You're not going to lose all your precious models on the ground. And also, you can design it exactly how you want if you need. And the best part about it is, these are not permanent. So if you get let's say you go out and you buy yourself a Phantom Titan, you're like, oh shit, I can't fit it on my shelving units, I'm boned. Uh-oh. But if you have those adjustable shelving units, you can go, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the L brackets from this particular sections, short the shelves in this particular sections, and put it there as a centerpiece. And you can actually make it where you have shelves that go all the way across the wall, or you can have shelves that go 4 feet, end for a 2-foot gap, and then go another 4 feet. And you can do that where you have like a centerpiece if you have a very large model that you're trying to display. So it's very modular. It's very, very handy, and I really do dig those.
Yeah, they're really nice too. They're not that hard to put up. I mean, people think, no, it's really not. You need maybe a level screwdriver,
and a tape measure.
And a tape measure. The drill is nice, but not absolutely necessary. But yeah, the only thing I have a problem with is especially if you're in a mobile home like I am, you have to go into studs. Do not even think that you cannot not go into studs, because they barely, I mean, like the thing we have, they barely have 1/4 inch drywall, for God's sake.
Yeah, and another thing you need to... Okay, so in a nutshell, all you have to do, and you're going to need some nails too. Nails that are big enough to fit inside the hole. And what you're going to want to do is you measure out from the floor to where the top of the shelf is, and then you drive a nail to hold the shelf into place, and you want to make sure you're lined up on a stud. And then you do that all the way across, and then you do a couple test fits with them hanging off the nail, or maybe just with a single screw in it, so you got a little bit of thing, and you make sure the important part is to make sure that they are even all the way across, so the L brackets are supporting all the boards.
Yeah, otherwise they could be, yeah. Plus, you're, they say measure twice, cut once. They're not kidding. It's the same, I say dry fit twice, cut once, but it's the same thing. You really do need to do that. Makes a big difference.
I figured you'd learn your lesson on dry fitting. You only want to do that shit once. You gotta
gotta use the lube, man.
You gotta spit on it at least the second time.
Lube is your friend.
If it ain't moist, it isn't. I just probably caused some people to go, ew, moist.
He said moist.
Oh my God. He said moist. I just can't handle that word. Cringe.
I sound like my children. Certain words trigger. I'm like, triggered. Haha.
All right. So do you guys have any more terrain stuff you want to talk about? I'm actually surprised you haven't turned into a pumpkin yet, Amy.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I've had a lot of coffee today. I'm trying to stay up for the Warhammer 40K, Age of Sigmar stream. So we'll see how well that goes. I'm probably going to...
You're going to go try to look at...
pile of drool here soon.
You're going to go try to watch your boyfriend Duncan on the screen.
I don't know if I'll make it that long. He's not till 8.
So what was the deal with, there was some big controversy over a how to play video that was put up for the new version of Age of Sigmar or something, and it was somebody who I guess does a lot of live things on YouTube or something.
I'm not really sure I understand what the controversy was.
Hold up, what?
Okay,
what the hell can the controversy be? She's
Yeah, okay, well, I don't know. I think a lot of people were, maybe, I'm interpreting, she was an American, okay, and she wasn't isn't a wargamer per se, I guess, maybe? But I mean, she's a presenter. She's presenting the material that they give her, and it's more like an ad job kind of thing, I guess you'd say. And a lot of people, like, who is this chick? And I guess there was some haters, and there were some people who
fuck those people.
I know.
She's a presenter. She's a presenter for IGN. Listen, you freaking basement dwellers, and yes, ironically, I'm sitting in a basement. They are bringing in people who are going to get it out into realms that is not there. The entire name of the game is growth. If you're not growing... I can't remember her name.
It's Becca something. I can't remember her last name.
She's friends with Ross.
I don't happen to actually know her or knew of her before this point, so I was a little... My whole thing was like, well, I don't know her, but, it doesn't mean she's bad.
Who else is the best person to sit there and explain a new game to, but someone who's not new to the game? And, sometimes I look for a co-host to come on the show who's not proficient because they ask the questions that we forget need to be answered. And it's the same thing with that type of live cast. She is an absolutely huge person on IGN. They are trying to get their name out to other avenues, and that's the perfect way, because what happens when someone Googles her name now? Hey, look, this really cool little Let's Play pops up from Warhammer, blah, 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 and people go, hey, that looks fun. And I hate to say it, y'all hating motherfuckers, but the biggest market for Warhammer and 40K is the United States. So yeah, it makes perfect sense that they have someone from America on there instead of England. I'm sorry to say, but No,
Chill,
no.
don't go all ranty, because I don't know for sure that was a thing. That was just something that I thought of as maybe that was part of the reason. But I don't know.
No, people hating because they want to fucking hate for dumb fucking reason.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people...
need to...
There were a lot of people who were questioning. I mean, I was questioning because I didn't know her, but that didn't mean anything, you know.
Yeah, who is she is a valid question.
Right. But then
why
there
the
was the
fuck is she
people who
on
just
here
went-
because she's a girl?
Yeah,
Is not.
That's kind of what struck me as some of it was yeah.
Well,
That
it
kind
was,
of
it was some of it was folks that were from overseas, and they kind of didn't like the Americanization of it, you know, with the quick fades and the music and that sort of stuff.
yeah, but that wasn't done by her, I don't think.
Oh,
I mean, that was
Yeah, guess what? Games Workshop did that. They asked
Yeah.
her to come and talk about shit.
right.
GW did the entire production company.
Speaking of the Warhammer TV feed, they were showing some of the clips from her stuff, you know, during breaks, because you know they're not going to be on absolutely every moment of 24/7 here, but they. Anyway, they were showing some of the clips, and some of the comments were interesting about that. And the thing that got me was I didn't like the camera angles of the particular video we were watching, because they kept switching, and it looked like she wasn't looking at us. You know, she was looking off camera. I mean, that's editing. That has nothing to do with her as a presenter or a person or you know or anything. And I just was like, oh, I don't really like this editing or whatever. But that's GW. That's just whoever's doing it. I can't remember who does that. Anyway. It's an interesting thing. I do wonder if a lot of it was just knee-jerk response, you know?
No, it's jerk-ass response.
Well, okay, knee-jerk-ass response.
And I hate to say it, but, America is the biggest market for 40K. It may be from England, but y'all's country is about the size of one of our states, and not even one of our big states. So, yeah, and your population is smaller than, I think, some of the cities we have.
I don't know that it was the UK was really commenting about it per se, but yeah, it was probably Facebook, you know, and you know what a freaking just fetid swamp of crap that has become. I'm sorry. I know GW does a lot of stuff on Facebook still. I prefer Twitter and some of the other social media. It isn't quite as bad, but it does seem like the grognards and the everything and the guys who can't even conceive of a girl playing any of these games in all of our formats, in Magic, in D&D for God's sake, in the wargaming industry as well. It seems like we're getting, probably because it is becoming more popular, and so the issue is rearing its head, and we're not accepting this bullshit anymore. It's like, no, women do play this stuff. I'm like, I'm sorry. I have said this since I started playing UO, where I was playing a male toon because I didn't like getting hit on by all the guys all the time, playing a female toon, because that's exactly what would happen. You're on an MMO, you don't have a lot of female representation at this point. If you see a girl, it's a guy in real life. Remember that little adage? Well, so I would play a male character, plus I prefer the eye candy of the male. And people go, oh my god, you're really a girl. I'm like, yes, I'm really a freaking girl. And that would just blow their minds. And I'm like, this was only 20 years ago, okay? This wasn't really that long ago. So, they're completely okay with somebody playing an ancient, evil, undead, magical elf being that's 4,000 years old, but it blows their mind that somebody is female playing a male character? It's the same thing I run into at D&D with some of these conversations we're having with the women that are encountering this shit. I just cannot fucking believe this crap, because it's like, God, you guys, it's the 21st fucking century. Yes, half the population has boobs. So what? Can we move on now?
It's just weird because, well, like tomorrow we're supposed to go to do, it's basically every month since 2006. Some friends of ours, they basically host like a game stay at their house. And people go there and they play board games of all kinds. And
Cool.
the majority of the people there are actually women. And they've been playing these games. Like Kathy, I think she was, I don't know, 10 years old or something like that when she started working up D&D character. I was the guy that never played it. I never knew what it was. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. So I never painted a miniature until Kathy said, well, hey, look, you got these miniatures here. Mind if I paint them? That was, 2001.
Wow.
So
It's hard to believe you've only been painting for that long, too.
It's just, to me, because of, between Kathy and everything else, it's always weird when I hear people say, yeah, girls don't do this stuff. Like, from my perspective, more of them do it than the guys. So that's just, it's kind of weird how that's, and anything can become a thing now.
Well, yeah, there's definitely that. I mean, you got a lot of people, I think, they're just running around looking for reasons to be offended, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm offended, you're offended. I don't know. Sometimes I think the internet might have been a bad idea.
Well, it's weird. I watching a lot of historical things. There was the same thing was said about the TV. It was gonna do all these horrible things. Then computers were gonna do all these horrible things. The telephone was gonna do all these horrible things. The telegraph was gonna do all these horrible things. Light bulbs.
Hey, the ancient Greeks and other peoples were like, writing is bad. It will ruin your memory. You won't be able to remember anything if you write, it was literally a thing then too. I mean, anytime there's a technology that, we seem to have this knee-jerk response to, oh no, we can't do this, it's bad. Part of the pendulum swing.
One of the things that made the Cuban Missile Crisis such a major crisis is that there was no direct phone line from the Kremlin to the White House. And Khrushchev was sending telegraphs.
Oh my God, yeah.
And he sent 5. And instead of getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they got the first one, then the third one, then the second one, then the 5th one, then the 4th one. And they thought he lost his mind. They thought they were dealing with a lunatic because some idiot was not sending the telegrams in the correct order. And it was after that they figured out some way to have a direct phone line so that people weren't blowing each other up because of telegrams not arriving when they're supposed to.
Well, we could go into education and all kinds of fun things for hours on end, I think, here, but I'm probably going to need to get off soon.
Well, I figured because it is, 11:37 here, 12:37 by you.
Yep. Oh my gosh, it really is. Wow. Well, that is awesome, though. I think we had some good chats.
Yeah, I think we got some of our terrain fixed, and it was minimal. We could do more, but
but we did talk about using terrain in games, which is important as well.
Actually, I don't think we've really covered that too much before. It's usually just the making of.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to come up with some ideas for making different versions of terrain that will work in different game systems. Barring, their various limitations like bolt action not having a grid pattern type of idea and, stuff like that.
Just having this basically terrain on top. Heck, I picked up a piece of my terrain, and all of a sudden all this stuff fell off. What the hell was going on?
Oh, no!
I had actually made, just with twigs and little tough balls, the green, like woodland scenics, those kind of things. All of a sudden, all this stuff fell off. I had built an entire gun emplacement on there, forgetting that it wasn't part of the piece of terrain. I thought it was a permanent thing until I picked it up and all fell off all over the place. So, and when I look at some of my battle, I'm like, that's just stuff that I threw on the table. That is not a piece of terrain. That is just some tufts, some grass, some sticks, and now it looks... So I'm going to do some more of that. It's going to get messy when I do the snow, but I think I'm going to have a can of compressed air, and what I'll do is I'll just kind of push it into one corner of the table and kind of recycle it that way. But I am obsessed with the idea of having actual snow on the table. Which the guys at Table War are going to love that, because their whole mat is going to be covered in pieces of terrain and snow. And they'll be like,
maybe lay down some plastic, like the plastic sheeting you put down for painting, and then you can pick it up and get 2 people, and basically just kind of fold it in half and dump it back into the box when you're all done.
Well, it sort of worked well with all this other stuff that I had thrown onto the table, these pieces of tufts and stuff. Actually using a little spray, like you used to clean out your computer and stuff to get the dust out of it.
Yeah.
It actually really worked, and at first I thought I was going to shoot it all over the house, but it didn't. I was very happy about that.
Wow.
All right,
Or maybe
so-
use an airbrush. Anyway, yeah.
Her name is Becca Scott. She is actually from Geek and Sundry. And, do you want to know what she does? She does how to play videos
Yes.
on every type of fucking game that's out there. Miniature games, card games, board games, games. She's a gaming girl. Meaning, get over yourselves. And also, I just want to put it out there for our 5 UK listeners. I've got no problem with the UK. I do have a problem with wankers. And the fact that GW had to go disable the comments on those particular videos because people want to be doucheballs
No, wait a minute.
about
wait a
it.
minute. Are those YouTube videos?
Yeah,
They never have the comments enabled. None of the GW videos have comments enabled.
They're smart. And here's the one thing I want to point out to everyone. GW is putting out videos. GW is putting out Facebook posts. GW is putting out tweets. Guess what GW did literally overnight one time? Stopped doing all of it. Literally one day, they turned off Voxcaster. They closed Evier Metal. They closed everything and said, sorry, we're done with the hate and ass trolls. We're just now getting it back.
Yeah.
For the cool people who appreciate them trying to expand the market, which gives us, more people to play against. Oh no, evil corporation trying to take other people's money, man. Because, having opponents to play when you go to your FLGS is a bad thing. Fucking idiots sometimes, I swear. So, honestly, who gives a flying rat fuck how they're trying to market their game? They're getting it out there. They have a very popular person from Geek and Sundry who does how to play, literally her job, and she's trying to expand it. Be happy that they're being proactive and trying to expand the game in a positive way instead of just going many, because honestly, that's what they did for like 2 editions. And right now, we need growth in our game because it's getting a little thin. For the people that were playing in like the early 2000s, we remember what it was like when 40K was just epic and huge and everyone was playing and everything else. Because GW was a proactive company. Let's get back to that because they're trying to get back to that. Let's focus on the good shit. Let's, if you're like, I don't know why they had an American person hosting it, and that's a valid question, and that raises debate. Well, because we have one of the largest markets for this game. Also, she opens it up to a whole new market that's out there.
Plus it's an internet thing, and she's known.
And she's known on the internet, and she's also a person that can get the game out there. I don't give a flying rat fuck if they're if they had Ninja from South Africa trying to introduce the game from Die Antwoord, because
that would actually be really cool.
That would actually be really, really... Or Jason Mewes, because Jason Mewes plays 40K. Jason Mewes from Jay and Silent Bob. Jason Mewes plays 40K. Man, can you imagine... Would y'all be bitching if it was Jason Mewes? Seriously. So just chill the fuck out. They're trying new things to get it out to people. Her showing the Let's Plays wasn't for us. It was for... and even if it was for us, she's a paid professional presenter. She was paid to professionally give the information out to a whole market that's friendly. And guess what? That's a type of video that I can show my daughter and go, look, she plays 40K. This is not just a boy thing. Yeah. It's a girl thing too. She likes it. She enjoys it. And it's a gateway. And that's how we get everybody to be fully inclusive in the new generation. That's how we get them to play. Because it used to be a boys' club, and we need to seriously stop that shit, because it isn't anymore. Get your daughters into playing. Get your wives into playing. Get your mom into playing. Hell, drag Granny out and be like, these are dice, and she'll show you up because she used to throw bones in the back alleys or some shit. But get them out there and get them playing, and let them...
Dude, Granny RPGing is one of the hottest things out right now, actually.
So is that how your playgroup got you?
No, not me. dude, I'm talking about somebody's actual grandma. They do Twitch streams, I think, and everything. Anyway, but yeah. Also, while you're at it, raise your boys to not freaking put up with this shit from other men.
Yeah. But, okay, before we get too ranty and before she turns completely into a pumpkin, and I've got a long day of Commander tomorrow, but I will talk at you guys on the other side. Do you folks have anything that you would like to sign off by saying?
Don't be a dick.
Terrain. All right, folks. Thank you for tuning in. You'll catch all the info on the outro. Peace. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another great episode of Models Workshop After Hours, your one-stop podcast for laughs and great painting advice. We come out at least every other week, barring emergencies and holidays, of course, covering a wide variety of hobby topics and basically talking about life in general. When you're not listening to us through your favorite podcatcher, you can find the entire crew hanging out at facebook.com/The Models Workshop. That's all one word smushed together, sharing all the cool things that we find floating around the internet and giving out painting advice. You can also find Larry on Twitter and Instagram at MWAH Podcast, and Yeji and Clint the same at Snickernack, which is NICKERNACK. If you like what we do, please make sure to drop a quick review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or whatever service you listen to us on. This helps us out greatly and gets the word of the After Hours out to everyone. If you want to make a donation to help us out, you can at paypal.me/Models Workshop, or you can do a monthly service at patreon.com/Models Workshop. Once again, thank you for listening. Until next time, grab those brushes, paints, and get to painting.